Welcome to Purgatory.
All right, what is going on, freaks and freakettes? Welcome back to the Purgatory Podcast. We are your hosts, Tofu and Mr. Vice Hero. And it is awesome to see you again. It has been a hot minute, hasn't it, buddy?
Yep.
A lot has happened, but we've stayed in touch, which is fucking awesome. It's been fucking 2 years since our last episode of the Purgatory Podcast, and it's been a lot of fun since then. Our careers have changed, our lives have changed a lot, but we wanted to bring it back around because we had a lot of fun doing all those episodes we did. And one of the most successful videos we had, or actually the most successful video we had, was a clip from an episode where we talked about the Gary Coleman cold case. And I remember it was really interesting to both of us, and we went really deep into it, just speculating and kicking stuff around. We got a pretty good response, and it's still getting views after 2 years. So we figured, let's bring this back and let's talk about some cases that people haven't talked about in a long time, and that there's still a lot of unanswered questions to. And here's our disclaimer, any YouTube lawyers that are out there. Nothing that we will ever talk about on this podcast now or into the future is ever an accusation. We're not saying we have any facts. This is purely speculation.
Yeah, and nowhere are we like kind of like, oh, this is so cool. It's so scary. You know what I mean? More like, oh, like this is interesting. I've never heard about this. And these are all going to be like the quote unquote biggest cases of each state as well. Mm-hmm. So the first one we got is Alabama, of course, and it's called The Disappearance of Sherry Lynn Marler.
Yeah, Sherry Marler.
Right? Yep, Sherry Marler. Nickname, by the way, Little Farmer.
The case is?
No, her. Like her,
okay.
her. I guess her parents used to call her that. So that's kind of the biggest thing. So to kind of jump ahead is the story so far has been the stepfather's leaving. He's going to the bank, and Sherry says, "Hey, can I tag along?"
I want to pump the brakes. When did this happen? How long ago?
This was in 1984.
So June a hot 6th. Minute ago.
Yeah. What is that? 40
fucking years.
Yeah, 40 years.
Almost 40 years. So 38, 37 years.
Mm-hmm.
This is an oldie.
Yeah.
For sure.
And that's what's crazy. I was telling Tofu, there's been very minimal updates. This is as cool as it can get, you know? Mm-hmm. So pretty much what happens is the stepfather's going to the bank, so into the city, and this is Greenville, Alabama. It's a small town. Back in the 1980s, it had a population around 7,807, so it's not that big.
Right.
So he's leaving to the bank. She asks if she can go along. He says, sure. They're at the bank. It's taking a minute for the transaction to go through, so he gives her $1 to go across the street to the gas station.
Right.
And so she leaves. After about 15 minutes or so, he goes and checks up on her, and he can't find her. She's not there. She's asking people, or he's asking people around, hey, have you seen her? Have you seen her? They're all saying no. And that's it. That's like the shortest this is probably the shortest case we'll ever get.
Yeah.
It's just from point A to point B. It's every parent's nightmare.
Yeah.
For sure. He sent her over there. One of the theories that the mom had brought up, I think her name was Betty. She had said that she thinks that maybe Sherry walked across the street, maybe asked people for change, and maybe someone nabbed her right then and there. Mm-hmm. There's been no other big leads. One of the biggest red flags in my head was there's been 3 eyewitnesses who have quote unquote spotted Sherry.
3 reports alleged reports of seeing her.
Because what I kept finding was that they were never confirmed, but they just kept popping up. Like every website I saw was listing it as 3 different.
Every article had these 3, and apparently she looked. They used the word disheveled, like her hair was messed up.
Yeah,
and she looked dazed.
3 people have come forward and have said to have seen her with a man in his 50s with weathered complexion and a husky build. One reported to have seen her in the mall in New Orleans, one at a truck stop in Georgia, and one heard her call the man BJ. And what's crazy is that all 3 people said that she looked disheveled and dazed, and they all described the guy similar, just husky, in his 50s, and just weathered complexion. Which I don't know if you guys have been to the South, but people down there just have, I guess, kind of dry skin. The older people, of course.
Like a 50-something-year-old man that's heavy set, that's probably like a huge portion of the dudes that live in that area. So it's
Yeah.
not super helpful to identify someone. And two, there's a picture of her that is easy to find, and she just kind of looks like a little girl. There's nothing that's like really would set her apart if in a crowd. You know what I'm saying? It just looks like a girl with dark hair. So the problem here would be with these 3 alleged sightings is like, I mean, they could have just seen a girl, or maybe it was her. But then, how did they not see a vehicle? If I saw something and I felt strongly enough about it to report it as a possible abduction lead, I would have tried to tail them to see which, like, a vehicle they got into or something. There's never a description of a vehicle. There's never a description of where they went.
There was
nothing like that.
There's nothing at all, which is
Nothing.
crazy. Like the guy. Okay, so the guy also, the stepfather, he called the wife and was like, "Hey, have you seen her down at? I think it was she worked at some diner," and she said, "No, I haven't seen her since like 8 a.m." And so he allegedly ran around and was asking everyone, "Hey, have you seen her? Have you seen her?" And everyone was saying no. Like, I mean, I see, like the guy at the gas station was like, "I see people coming in and out all day." So I didn't see any, like,
Right.
I didn't see anyone in particular. So there's a couple of theories out there. One of the less crazy ones is that she ran away, because I was seeing here that in like in the 1980s there was like a big call to Congress about like just runaway teens. How it was getting close to 1 million, and how they just needed to like make sure she wasn't just a runaway. But the parents have both come out and said like, no, she like loved where she was at. We never fought, and she didn't take anything with her.
Right.
In most cases of the runaways,
she didn't take anything. She didn't prepare. She didn't have a backpack. Nothing. Everything was fine, and then she was gone.
Exactly. So people have just ruled that out, just like simply. And what I think was crazy too, going back to the guy, is that the reportings have been so scattered. I mean, like New Orleans and what was the other one? Just in a truck stop somewhere in Georgia. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those are such like
pretty bizarre.
I mean, they're like somewhat close, but like not close enough where you'd be like, oh, like yeah, like
if it is her, this gentleman that she was with was on the move in a big way, you know. So.
Well, you got to figure if they saw her at a truck stop, you know what I mean, he's a trucker, and so he could be going across the U.S., you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, so, but even so, it's still goofy as hell to me that they wouldn't be like, I'm going to see what vehicle she gets in. You know? That's...
Well, like that kind of, that I kind of just combat that with like, it's the 80s, you know what I mean? I feel people are just kind of doing their own thing, you know what I mean? No one's kind of like keeping tabs on other people's kids.
But they felt strongly enough about it to report it.
Yeah, 100%.
So why wouldn't you be like, I'm going to get as much information as I can if I think that's an abduction case?
Yeah.
You know? That's kind of weird.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. The next like big thing I think is crazy about this case is that so the stepfather's name is Raymond, and the police were, I mean, he was obviously the first suspect because he was the last one to see her, and the police they asked him to do a polygraph test, and he refused, which I think it's crazy, but on the other side, polygraph tests are only 87% accurate, so I feel like just he wasn't willing to take those odds as far as like if it says I'm wrong and I'm not wrong, I don't want to look like I'm a like kidnapped.
Yeah, and then now he's in prison for something that he really didn't do.
Exactly. So he was like, I'm not gonna take those odds. And the police kind of they ruled him out because they were like he was cooperating the whole time. He looked very worried, and even until his deathbed, because he died in what 2005.
Yeah.
Oh no,
I remember that.
Yeah, the spring of 03. And he was quoted. He told the wife, he said, "Betty, I wish I could get Sherry and bring her home, but I can't because I don't know where she is."
Right.
So.
For him to be faking for that long and that convincingly would be a hell of a fake.
Yes. What I think is crazy is, okay, so I never saw any interviews with him. I've never seen him in person. I've never met him. I've never talked to him.
Well, this shit happened in the 80s, so technology was so far behind from what we have now. It probably just wasn't the norm for CNN to show up and put a mic in his face. You know what I mean?
Well, what I think is crazy is that like he was the last to see her, you know what I mean? And then he did refuse the polygraph test, And then just the second half of his quote where he says, like, I want to bring her home, but I can't because I don't know where she is. I just don't know why he would add that in. You know what I mean? It just sounds a little weird the way he worded it by saying, like, I don't know where she is. It's like, well, yeah, of
Well,
course
he
we don't
could
know where
still
she
not
is.
be lying if he turned her over to some human trafficking ring. He wouldn't know where she was.
Yeah, like those have all been like
And I'm not accusing him
speculations.
of that, but it's
Oh
just
yeah, 100%. But no, I'm just saying I thought it was really interesting. You know what I mean? A lot of things
Mhm.
just weren't aligning with him. People have said sexual trafficking and whatnot, but it's kind of just went along with the runaway thing. It just wasn't that big in Georgia at the time. You know what I mean? There wasn't like a lot of cases reported there.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like, well, slavery and prostitution are probably the two oldest professions or trades in humanity, right?
Yeah,
There's always been slaves and there's always been sex that's sold for money. So I mean, there was definitely human trafficking around.
yeah,
Maybe it wasn't as reported, but the presence was for sure there. You know what I mean?
hmm
So I
yeah,
don't think we can rule that out as a possibility. Now,
yeah,
the hog pen theory is one that makes a lot of sense to me, because my father, his lunch lady from high school, her husband, so my dad's lunch lady's husband from high school, he was a hog farmer and he fell down in his hog pen and his hogs ate him. So, like, this is a real thing. This really happens. Hogs will eat the clothing, they'll eat the buttons. The only thing that that you'll be able to find is the teeth, because the teeth won't digest in their body, right?
hmm
But you'd have to find it before, I don't know, they washed away or they became buried deep in the soil or whatever. So there is a theory that she was abducted, and what I saw was by someone she knew that was not her stepfather, right?
yeah. They were
The
saying like a family friend of some kind.
Right. And there was a post on a Facebook group. It's called Sherry Marler Still Missing. And it's a Facebook group that's still out there. And there was a post that was within the last couple of years or few years. And it said Sherry Marler is deceased, and she was abducted and she was killed and then fed to these hogs. So if in your head you're like, what? Pigs could eat a person? Yes, they will absolutely eat a person if they're hungry enough. That is a thing that will happen. And there is a picture of a pig, and the caption says, a pig standing over what looks like a severed head. If I was just looking at the picture, I wouldn't go, that's a severed head, you
Yeah,
know? But if you kind of strain your eyes and turn your head the right way, I mean, I guess you could kind of see maybe it's a very, very deformed, well into the decomposition process head, but it could also be just a clump of mud, you
yeah.
know?
And then, also to like give a little bit of background is in this Facebook group. There's this lady named Ryan Welch Anderson, and she had found the area where they think the hog farm was,
Hmm.
and she had found a relative of the owner of the farm, because it's not a farm anymore. You know what I mean? It's gone now.
Right.
And she had been like, hey, did you just have a hog farm here? And the person was like, yeah, we did. And they let them inside and showed them like pictures. You know what I mean? And that's where she found the picture. And like you said right off the bat, the picture doesn't look sketchy at all. It doesn't look sus. But people have like, you can look it up. Just look up Sherry Marler pig picture,
Right.
and people have like turned up the contrast on it, and it looks I mean, it looks like a head, but also like you said, it could be a clump of mud. It could be anything.
Right. You
It's
got
just
to
a
have
little
some
weird.
pretty strong confirmation bias in your head to really
Mhm.
like, that's a severed head. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
because a lot of people, because this is really big on Reddit. You know, this is Reddit for
Hmm.
cold cases and whatnot. And people are saying like, why would this guy keep a picture of his crime? You know what I mean? It makes no sense for him to have
Right.
that. But then some people were saying like, well, people who are like that, kind of sick in the head, they'll keep
Yeah.
trophies of their kills. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
him being like, because if you ever got questioned by it, he'd be like, oh no, that's just mud. And there's no evidence now. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because
There
like
was
you
the
said,
whole, there's another picture of someone holding a piece of cloth.
yeah,
And
okay,
I'm
yeah.
like,
That's what I was gonna say next is so then this person on the Facebook group, she kind of banded them together a little group, and they're kind of like digging up the farm, kind of like
mhm.
piece by piece, and they found this like piece of cloth that's torn, and they're saying it's like old pair of sweatpants, I think, with like an elastic waist. But then people who are like from a country background are saying, no, that's like a potato sack, or that's like a sack
Yeah.
that you would hold things in. You know what I mean? Like specific like country terms that I'm not
Even
really
if
used
it
to.
was a pair of sweatpants, there's a million ways a pair of sweatpants could have found its way into that area of land in the last 40 years.
Oh yeah,
You know?
100%. That's the problem, is that these people are just like I'm just gonna call them amateurs, you know, because they're not like detectives or anything like that.
Yeah.
They're
They're
just
really
kind of
grasping for straws, trying to find something. You know?
exactly. And so the people have just been posting their gripes on Facebook, as far as like they gave the picture, or the owner of the picture gave it to the police, and then the lady on Facebook claims to have followed up with the FBI, and the FBI said, "Oh, we never got anything from the police station. They haven't sent us anything." And
This
then
to me, I don't mean to sound calloused here, but a picture of a piece of cloth almost 40 years after the fact, or 30 years after the fact, is not enough for an FBI investigation. You know?
well, not just that. Like she's claiming that there's blood on the pants, or the cloth, and the stains on there look kind of like bright red. And people are saying, well, blood just doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? People
Right.
on
It
Reddit are
wouldn't.
just like, it doesn't just
After
stay
30
bright.
fucking years. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like pretty much this person on Reddit made a whole update about it, kind of talking about like what I said, how they're kind of digging it up slowly and whatnot, and
Well, that completely flies in the face of the people that saw her in states away, you know,
exactly.
because if she was abducted, killed, and disposed of right there in Alabama, then the three, not just one sighting, but all three sightings would have been completely fabricated.
Yeah, well, this guy on Reddit kind of comments on his post and kind of says like, the problem with this is that these guys are kind of like, they're grasping at straws here. They don't have any solid evidence. I mean, they're finding like cloth, and they're claiming it's pants. You know what I mean? That's not what you do when you're investigating. You don't just, oh, these are pants, and this is blood right here. You can't just make these assumptions. So, this guy's pretty much just saying like, while I do think it's important that we solve the case and have the family have some closure before they pass, we can't just be like,
let's throw somebody in jail. Like,
yeah,
we
no,
can't,
like a mob mentality, kind of like, let's find out what happened right now, and we're gonna push our narrative because we want this to be solved. You know what I mean? Because most of the times when things like that happen, it never ends up clean for anyone. You know what I mean? They make more of a mess than they do anything else. And what's crazy is that if you look all over the place, this like theory is called like the incest pig farm, and they really throw in the word incest for no reason. Because the person wasn't related to her, the supposed person wasn't related to her anyway. So it's just like
they're implying that there was they
just want to draw more attention to it, you know, by throwing in these like buzzwords.
I think a better theory would be that she was abducted and then taken somewhere, because we have 3 reports of someone seeing her elsewhere, where there's no reports at all of anyone seeing her in Greenville. So I think that she's out of Greenville and she went.
Yeah, I think the whole pig farm theory is just kind of people like wanting to put like a really crazy twist on it, to be like, oh my God, she was taken to a farm where she was like tortured and fed to pigs. Because
it's more like you watch too many horror movies, dude.
Well, no, not just that. I think with like the explosion of like Netflix documentaries, you know, with like Making a Murderer, they want those like crazy twists. But another more like down to earth theory is that she did have like I don't remember if it was a stepsister or a half sister who lived on like the East Coast, and she did visit her that previous summer. So people are thinking that maybe she might have ran away to her sister, or her sister came to pick her up, you know what I mean, on that day. Just because she was like, oh, can I go to the bank with you? Just like so urgently to the dad.
And then she was like, today's the day we're going to break away. And
exactly. Like, you come take me and go live with you. Because, I mean, I don't know if anyone's ever grown up with older siblings. You know, you go hang out with your older sibling. It's just like fun. You know what I mean? You're kind of like your own parent and whatnot.
I wonder how much older the sibling was.
No, well, I mean, she was like married, and she had like, you know what I mean?
She might, because the sibling moved far away.
Yeah.
So there's usually a reason that someone moves far away. Maybe there's some trauma. Maybe there was something she wanted to get away from. Maybe she just wanted to move far away. But it's interesting to me that her sibling lived far enough away that it was like an occasion for her to come back, you know. So here's a wacky theory. Maybe there was some abuse in the home that her sister got the hell away from and moved half a country away. And then now Sherry got word to her, I want to get out of here, and then her sister came and nabbed her, and they moved.
Yeah, which I think that's like the theory I hope happened, you know what I mean? Because that's like the best case scenario.
It's the happiest ending, I guess.
Yeah. She kind of went away, lived with her sister, you know what I mean? And they kind of just, maybe they took the secret to their grave, you know what I mean? I mean, there's a chance they could be dead, not really a big one, but I think they kind of were just like, let's just do our own thing, you know what I mean? We're states away, we can kind of just like chill out here. And then she might have changed her name or whatnot, you know?
Right.
I think it's been long enough where she could have come out by now and said, hey, I'm found, you know what I mean? Especially
with the passing of her stepfather and I think her mother as well.
No, the mom's still alive, and she's still like,
is she okay?
She's like constantly like let's find her, let's bring her home, kind of thing.
I think here's why that theory I just mentioned doesn't work very well. If there was abuse on from the stepfather when he passed away, the mother would have said something.
Well, I mean,
unless she was in on it.
Well, I mean, even if she wasn't, she wants to keep his memory in good graces. You know what I'm saying? She's not gonna like talk trash about him, because I mean, these are like Southern people who are like, you know what I mean, from the 80s. They're very like respectful.
I'm not saying that was a thing. I'm just like,
we're just speculating,
plucking things out of the sky and saying, well, what about this? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I mean, those are those are the main theories. I mean, like, again, to like reiterate, it's just crazy how there's been no major updates. You know what I mean? It's been, we just said about to be 30 years. No, about to be 40 years.
The most recent update that is like, okay, someone actually went to the police and reported this would have been those 3 people that saw her. And that was in 1984. You could count the person on the Facebook group saying, oh, I know what happened. But that, again, I think that's more of a theory. I think that Sherry was likely abducted by somebody that was not from Greenville. I think she got nabbed from the bank and taken into a human trafficking ring. And I think Sherry was very likely, she probably met her end in that ring. And I think that's very unfortunate.
It's very sad. There's been no updates at all. And people want to like, when things like this happen, there's no right answer. So people want to say crazy things like the farm. I mean, maybe one day we'll get an update. They'll find something crazy on the farm. You know what I mean? Maybe some like actual DNA. But I think kind of what you said. It's very open and shut. It's gonna be our shortest case so far. And I think she was just kidnapped. Whether she died or lived, we'll never know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because there's a chance she could have lived and just developed some kind of sick Stockholm syndrome. Or just went off the deep end, just taken at such a young age.
Yeah, there's literally anything could have happened. There's just not enough information to really form any kind of smoking gun, you know.
And I mean, there's no one to blame, you know what I mean. I don't believe that the stepfather had anything to do with it. The whole polygraph thing was very interesting. Just because he was a lot of the reports that he was very adamant about refusing it. Like, he was like, nope, I'm not gonna do it. I'm like, don't ask again. And so I really don't think he had anything to do with it. I think it's just really like, as quick as we explained the case, it's very open and shut case. She was just taken. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, that's for sure. She was kidnapped, and I'm guessing just kidnapped by a trucker. They drove all across America, and he just took her back home. You know, wherever that may be. Yeah, because people love to think like, oh, we'll look around and we'll find her. You know what I mean? But
it's a big fucking world.
Yeah, especially back then, there wasn't a lot of like, there wasn't a lot of like
there was no like snap a picture with your smartphone and send it.
Not just that, like even wherever you live, you know what I mean? They're getting like to be like less and less country, because like suburbia is growing.
Yeah.
And so me just working with truckers and going and driving with them, you'll drive out to the country and you'll just see like houses, you know what I mean? And you'll see like deep in like the woods or deep in the country, you'll see like a single house. So I mean, there's a chance this guy could have took her back home,
Yeah.
and she just lived with him. You know what I mean? Whether
That is
you know what I mean?
as shitty as it sounds, that's a happier ending than some of the other theories are.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe she had some kind of life afterwards.
Exactly. You know what I mean? I mean, unless anyone comes forward, we will most likely never get an update.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's pretty much the whole story. I truly believe this is going to be
it's an interesting
shortest
one to start on. We're just doing it alphabetically, but there's not a whole lot to talk about because there's just not a whole lot of information. It's like she's just disappeared into thin air. You know, no one saw a car peeling out. No one saw like a little girl being taken out of a doorway kicking and screaming or anything like that, you know. So it's just so odd.
Yeah, and then they have released pictures of what she would look like now, theoretically. Yeah. And I mean, she's what, like 50 now? She'd be in her 50s.
She just looks like a white lady. She looks very like just like, yeah, that's a woman. Like if you just drew a picture of your average white lady with dark hair.
I definitely don't believe any of like the outlandish theories. You know what I mean? I don't really, just from what I've read about the stepsister one, because people were saying that she either ran away to her, or people are saying that the sister took her, like the sister was a kidnapper. Which I just don't see why. The parents weren't too like. That's people go back and blame the parents because the parents just didn't shed a lot of light. You know what I mean? Maybe this just didn't get enough media coverage where we could get a lot more information. Like I don't think people went out of their way to interview the parents. You know what I mean? I think it was a small case, and it went down in history because they just never found her. You know what I mean? There was no conclusion. But I think at the time, they kind of just treated it as like, we'll find her eventually. You know what I mean? Whether it be a body or we'll find her living. People were saying that the police immediately were like on it and they were like scourging the lands for her.
That's what's so wacky about this too, is like there's 50 cases we're going through in this series for each state, and almost all of them, there was a body found.
Yeah.
And there was just nothing with this one. You know, nothing at all. And these other cold cases, it's like, we found this body, they're clearly dead. Now the mystery is how.
What happened to them? Yeah.
Right. So this one, we don't know how or who, and there's no body. There's just nothing. It's really crazy.
That's what like people always say about cold cases is that when you find a body, the family gets closure. You know what I mean? Like, sadly, they met their fate, and that's it. Whereas this one's more haunting because we'll just never know. You know what I mean? Unless there's a big update, like I said earlier.
The more time passes, the less likely that is to happen.
Yeah, and I mean, it's already been so long. You know what I mean? That's why I'm really doubting that there will be a major update coming soon.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that kind of wraps up the Sherry Lynn Marler case. Unfortunately, I doubt there's going to be any more development. Our condolences go out to her family for sure. And if you know anything about this case or you come across anything about this case, report it to your authorities immediately, and maybe some crazy miracle would happen in which she is discovered. Next episode, which is the Craig, Alaska cold case from September 6, 1982, the investor fishing boat mass murder. Mark Colthurst, his pregnant wife Irene, their 2 children, and 4 teenage deckhands were found dead on the investor a fishing boat. It is believed that the killer first shot the victims and then returned the next day to torch the boat. So there's a lot of wacky theories. There's a lot of things that could have happened. We're going to try to talk about a few of them, and we hope you tune in next time for your weekly dose of Purgatory.